my dad's dad, my grandfather, he was an organic gardener. He had this really great garden up in Idaho, and my dad was always jealous of, and he'd always talk about, his dad's garden, And I seen it, and the soil was just like really dark, like the soil we have here in the boxes, And my dad was always saying how great his garden was, So my dad really, he liked to garden, but he wasn't like a farmer per se. Yeah. I was up in Washington State, in the Puget Sound area. So it doesn't have the best growing season there, but it has like 4 or 5 months of relatively decent weather. And so the window is pretty tight growing your vegetables there. And so, we get involved pretty early in the season, work the soil, and plant our crops. And we never really had very good crops, until the time I discovered my dad's organic gardening encyclopedia. And when I was a kid, my dad, put in a garden. It wasn't, a very big garden, but, he got us involved, especially me, being one of the older children in our family. He conspired me to go work in the garden. And I'm glad he did, because I kind of had a knack for the rototiller, and I just thought it was kind of fun, except when it came to weeding, that wasn't too fun. But and then I found his Rodale Organic Gardening Encyclopedia, and I just looked through it because I was planting some tomatoes, and in there they had all these soil recipes for different plants. And so I followed their recipe, and I sifted the soil, and I did this really great transplanting job of the seedlings that we had for the tomatoes. And then I went off to boot camp in the Navy, and when I came back, my parents were asking me, what did you do to these tomato plants? They are just crazy, growing like crazy. And we got so many tomatoes off of them. And that's where, I figured out that organic gardening is really awesome, And it has a big concern for the environment, for maximizing your crop output, and keeping your plants healthy so that they resist insects naturally, to avoid using chemical fertilizers and pesticides. And so I've been kind of a believer of that ever since, and really strive to, make my garden as organic as possible. But basically, I try to keep my plants healthy, so that they're not susceptible to diseases and insects. Because when, for example, if I don't water them every other day during this hot weather, they start wilting. And when they wilt, their natural defenses kind of get compromised. And then, it's easier for insects to come in, or funguses or other plant diseases to affect your plants. So as long as you keep them healthy, they have natural defenses that they've developed over eons that will allow them to keep going, And you really don't need pesticides. Pesticides, I think, should be strictly limited to, the most severe cases. Well, I've gardened for many years, and I've read a lot. I've read Rodale Organic Gardening Encyclopedia. Plus, through my life, I've purchased a few of their books, and I've been a subscriber to their organic gardening magazine. In fact, I used to read that so much that I read it for years that the articles would start coming back, you know, the same articles. So I kind of consider myself somewhat of an expert in organic gardening, you know, and it's taught me things, especially, for example, in this area, the soil pH is very high. It's around 8 to 11. And so you want your pH to be more neutral so the plants enjoy better growth. And so, you know, you want to add like humus to the soil, you know, like compost, or even you can buy products from like Home Depot. They're advertised as gardening soil, and they have a high amount of humus in it, and you mix that in with your soil, and it makes the soil more neutral so that the roots in your plants are more healthy. Yeah, I just kind of sketch it out, and there is specifications in a lot of gardening books that tell you how close to plant them. Now, I use intensive growing methods, which allow you to bring the plants in closer together. And the idea behind that is if you have garden soil that's very well amended with all kinds of great organic, you know, material like this stuff here. I used a little organic fertilizer, and I used intensive growing methods. So I grew them closer together. And one thing that does, as you can see over here with the marigolds and my tomatoes, is it creates a canopy so that the bed doesn't dry out as fast. And in the case here where I put the marigolds right next to the tomatoes, they're companion plants, so they have this symbiotic relationship to each other, and they actually help each other grow and resist insects and diseases. So, you know, there's a lot of factors you put into the design of your garden, and that's just one of them, considering, you know, whether you want to use tried and true, really positive gardening methods. And, you know, that takes a little bit of book smarts. You know, get a good book on organic gardening and read it through. You know, when I first started doing that, I just couldn't put them down. But, you know, hopefully others will get into that too, because I think it's a much needed craft. I think it is very important during this crisis time, because you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe the food chain might collapse. What are you going to do then? You know, if you have a garden, well, you got some food, guaranteed. You know, and God forbid that things would go that direction, because it might get pretty ugly. But I think it's really important that people learn how to grow their own food, because you just don't know what's going to happen around the corner. I mean, you know, historically, stuff happens. And I think it's just a good skill to learn. You know, positive across the board. It's healthy for you, it's healthy for the environment if you use organic methods as much as possible. It's just a win-win situation. Oh, well, you know, when I come out here, it's almost like going to church, you know. I just get this connection with nature, you know. I try to become part of it, you know, like, you know, we have a lot of birds around here, and I watch them, or, you know, I check out the insects in the area. You know, I learn about new plants. For example, we were talking about these trees of heaven and how invasive they are. And, you know, how we need to control those. And I actually resorted to herbicide to control them, but they're really invasive. So they're like a weed, only they're like a gigantic weed. But I just feel a real connection when I'm out here to nature. And it's just very soothing, and primal. It's something inside of me that relates to it, you know, and it's rewarding. Hi, my name is Dale, and this is my garden. I'd like to start explaining what the plants are. This over here are Hungarian yellow wax hot peppers. As you can see, they're flourishing and they got all kinds of fruit. And I usually just find one that's kind of big, and I twist it and pull. And these are great for anything you want a little bit of hot pepper. You know, they're not really that hot. That's one thing I like about them. You can just put them on anything. I like putting them on my sandwiches, my burgers, my soup, whatever. Over here are marigolds. And I've never seen marigold plants this healthy. And I think it has a lot to do with the soil. But I planted them next to my big beef tomatoes, because marigolds and tomatoes are companion plants, meaning they have a symbiotic relationship with each other and they help each other grow. Now I have two types of big beef. I got this seed from eBay, and it definitely is different than this plant I got from Home Depot. I learned a valuable lesson this year that seeds you buy at eBay, you're kind of taking your chance because they're kind of amateurs when it comes to breeding, I believe. Because the tomatoes on these are not as hardy as the tomatoes on these as far as their development goes, although this plant's taller. But I also learned some things about tomato plants in that they have a lot of diversity in their makeup, especially when you're breeding them for hybrids, which these two are. You know, you can get more than one of the, you take two different types of tomatoes and you breed them together, and that's a hybrid. And sometimes the tomatoes will favor one plant over the other, and so you get some diversity in the results. And the big companies, they test their seed first. I don't think they did that with this one, because this one isn't producing very much. And these are Kentucky Wonder pole beans, and they're just going nuts. I'm going to probably have to put an extension on here because they're already escaping. And that's it for this area. That's an heirloom, by the way, what they call an heirloom plant. And I do have some tomatoes on that one big beef. They're little green tomatoes. That being right over here. See right here. So this thing's actually pretty loaded right now. Other tomatoes in here too. They're hiding. I make my own tomato cages, and I support them with this horticultural product, green tape. You've probably seen it. I buy it over at Grocery Outlet. And over here, these are two tomato plants. They're orange, little tomatoes. What do they call those?
Cherries.
Cherry tomatoes. Yes, thank you. And these are supposed to be really sweet, and they're a special F1 hybrid, meaning that they're crossed with another tomato, but they've been developed to reduce their capacity to increase their capacity to resist diseases. This one has 3 plants in it. This one has 1. And basically I made a deal with the people here because these were their pots, and I asked permission to use them. I said, you can help yourself to the produce, and everyone's happy, you know. Yeah. You can see how healthy they are. I use potting soil. And the potting soil actually has a certain amount of chemical fertilizers in it, but I also put in some organic fertilizers too to make sure, you know, complement with good nutrition. Well, I primarily use organic fertilizers, but there's fertilizers that come in these potting soils, and they're usually like little capsules, and they break down over time to slowly feed your plants. Yeah. Okay, over here I got 2 rows of Danvers carrots, and they're called half long, so they don't get really long, but they get here, I'll pull one up. Maybe 2 or more, because these are kind of planted a little bit too close together. Oops. Oh, they're pretty much ready right now. So they get like this, and they're very sweet. I like to roast them or steam them. I don't really like to cut them up so much because they're so small that they make for a nice little helping of carrots, and they look nice on the plate. And here I have Belgian bunching onions, and I'm letting them grow. I'm gonna use them for making salsa with tomatoes and my peppers. And I should have grown some cilantro, because I like to put that in there into my salsa too. And I like to, you know, let some of the purslane grow in here. It's a indigenous plant. It's a succulent, and it's edible. It's really good. It's high in amino acids. And the leaves, when they get big like this, they have a nice citrusy flavor, real crunchy. And they just come up wild. I didn't have to plant them. And over here I have golden nugget cherry tomatoes. I really like these. They're very prolific, as you can see all the flowers here. Hopefully they'll bear tomatoes, and they just cascade. And you know, these are not quite ripe, of course. And then over here I have some Asian cucumbers. They're called Tokyo, and I like Asian cucumbers because they don't have the bitter gene in them. So they always have a very mild and delightful flavor.
And how do you find this program, La Mesa Verde?
Well, I was having some trouble making my rent, so I went down to Sacred Heart, and I got into their system, and I believe somebody just called me up and said, "You want to get involved with this program?" And I said, "Sure," you know, because I've done gardening in the past with what do they call that? Community gardens.
Ah, okay.
And since I live in an apartment, that's the only way I can do my gardening. unless I put some containers out on the patio. But this is really great. And the soil, the compost you guys make is just fantastic. As you can see right here, this is the first year box right here. And everything just went gonzo. So it's the best organic type of garden you can hope for. I haven't had any problems with insects because when your vegetables are healthy, they have natural defenses against insects. They're not as susceptible.
So in terms of keep your plants healthy, what is the key for you? What is the things you have to keep online about this?
Well, you know, I put in the organic fertilizer and it has a wide spectrum and it plus has minerals and all kinds of stuff in there. It has this volcanic ash, it's very rich in minerals. But keeping it watered in the hot weather is critical, because if you don't, they'll wilt rather fast, and when they wilt, they're very susceptible to insects and funguses. So, you know, just have to keep on top of them, and it's a commitment. If you're not committed to take care of your plants, well, they won't take care of you.